When my driveway becomes the HOA's next parade route, I hatch a hilariously chaotic revenge plan that turns tyranny into unrestrained joy. Will I finally rally my neighbors against the bureaucratic reign? Hey there, Porch Patrol Squad. Let me know if you've ever locked horns with a Karen like in today's story. Smash that like button and spill the tea in the comments. And if you're craving more outrageous HOA battles, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. Believe me, you don't want to miss how this unfolds. As we spun in a conga line that spiraled dangerously close to Pamela's clipboard, a perceived extension of her icy disdain, the energy of our rebellion electrified the air. Laughter burst forth from every corner of the room, mingling with something deeper, something almost magical. The sweet taste of freedom that comes not just from the absence of rules, but from the camaraderie born in defiance. It was a glorious moment, like throwing a surprise party for self-determination. I reveled in the sheer ridiculousness of it all. A room full of neighbors, once silenced by the weight of HOA ordinances, now rhythmically swaying under the banner of liberation, their souls unshackled. And who, may I ask, was going to stop us now? Not Pamela, whose lips were still tightly clamped in an expression of disapproval, nor the officers who wore bemused smiles that hinted at a shift in the tide. After all, it's not every day when the law traded in their serious badges for party hats. Yet, like a character drawn from a Shakespearean farce, Pamela wasn't about to go quietly into that good night. Her indignant posture reminded me of a giraffe attempting to blend in at a hippopotamus party, awkward and thoroughly out of place. Clutching her clipboard with a vice grip, she began wading through the throng of festive revelers. Her heels click-clacking with a faux authority that contrasted sharply with the joyous chaos surrounding her. "This will not stand," she declared, dramatically raising her finger as though summoning thunder and lightning. My neighbors momentarily halted their movements, stifling giggles behind cupped hands and wide, pleading eyes. Oh, how they thrived on this comedic showdown. They had collectively traded in their silent dissatisfaction for a chorus of empowerment, rendering Pamela's threats ineffective in this lighthearted pandemonium. "Exactly what won't stand, Pamela," I called out, twirling slightly to face her, my denim jacket swirling around me like some informal superhero cape. "A celebration of community? An impromptu reclamation of the driveway you've tried to take from me?" The laughter from my neighbors grew louder at that, and Pamela flinched, her face knitting into a mask of disbelief that could rival a mackerel's deadpan stare. I motioned toward the scattered remnants of her precious rules, littered along the makeshift dance floor. Guideposts, or shall we say, guidelines, have turned into decorations. Look at how we're finding joy amidst your legal trappings. And with that, the conga line resumed. My sport of choice was poking fun at authority, and it had never been more entertaining. But Pamela was no ordinary antagonist. She was the HOA's queen bee, dressed to the nines in her tailored darkness, carrying the weight of bureaucratic bandwidth in every step she took. In her unyielding pursuit of order, she had failed to research the essential rules of partying, specifically, the importance of actually joining in. "You're all undermining the very fabric of our neighborhood. This chaos is a violation of everything," she sputtered, her voice peaking in that high-pitched range that fly fishermen everywhere would recognize as the sound of hooking a particularly slippery trout. Tom, snickering beside me, quickly stage-whispered, "Tell her chaos is the new order." And just like that, what might have been sung as tragedy morphed into comedic gold, fueling the fireworks of laughter bursting from my neighbors and brightening the mood even further. Finally, sensing the delicious opportunity to take the spotlight away from Pamela, I decided it was time to truly transform this gathering into a theatrical masterpiece. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, grabbing a plastic microphone from a nearby child's toy stash, "we are at the center of a movement. Let's call it the HOA lament, the poetry of our rebellion." The crowd clapped, and the officers tried to stifle their amusement, leaning into the fun of the moment. Let's create our very own HOA-themed slam poetry. Each stanza a tribute to our defiance against those deeply rooted regulations. The crowd was electric now, whispering suggestions and giggling about the absurdity of the situation, while Pamela stood gaping, her carefully curated universe unraveling around her like a loose thread. Spurred on by the laughter and a few spirited shouts erupting from the crowd, a neighbor slid toward the center, taking the imaginary stage before the maintainers of order. "Your rules are like kitchen sponges," she began, her voice surging with newfound zeal. "They soak up all the joy and leave behind only damp dreams." Possessed by the spirit of the moment, others chimed in with their own lines, each more absurdly imaginative than the last. Pamela's brows knitted tighter with each rhymed jab, her expression oscillating between indignation and bemusement as she battled to maintain the last fragments of her authority in this uprising of creative revolt. As she opened her mouth to retort, only to be drowned out by the riotous cheers of my neighbors, I knew Pamela's reign was swiftly reverting to the realm of ludicrous lore, a sort of community folklore they would recount for generations. As our impromptu forum continued, a swell of exhilaration swarmed through me, knowing that the night would surely end in pure triumph. Maybe it would become a whispered legend, this HOA lament, the fight of a neighborhood fueled not merely by a desire to reclaim their parking spots, but by a shared power and laughter that surged through the very fabric of the community. And just when I thought we were reaching the zenith of our creative chaos, I caught sight of the backyard where Pamela's immaculate patio pool shimmered under the glow of lanterns. Oh, how beautifully poetic. How deliciously ironic. Was it too petty to also consider turning her perfectly pristine pool into one filled with the squelching surprises of my rerouted sewer? There it was, the grand finale of this celebratory rebellion. Would she finally take the plunge into the very dish she had so fervently tried to serve us? I could hardly wait to share this thought with my coalition of merry mischief makers. The energy crackling in the air was electric, as the finally finished HOA lament concluded its grand performance with the last droll lines, each met with uproarious laughter from the crowd. I reveled in the shared joy, and at that moment, I gently nudged Tom, whispering conspiratorially, "What if we took this celebration one step further? I mean, if Pamela insists on treating our lives like her own one-woman show of scores and scores of regulations, shouldn't we give her a glorious act to remember?" Tom's face lit up, the twinkle in his eye giving me confirmation before he whispered back, "I'm in. Let's put on a show she won't forget." The undeniable absurdity of it all propelled my imagination, stirring the seething cauldron of revenge that simmered in the back of my mind since the HOA commandeered my driveway. As the final pièce de résistance, I began to rally our merry band of revelers to contribute to the glorious coup. What if we turned that pristine, unwanted oasis of Pamela's into a pool of chaos? I exclaimed dramatically, motioning toward her immaculate backyard. Imagine the scene, a grand plunge of neighborhood hilarity into the depths of her very control. What if we rerouted the sewer into her pool? I mean, it's been the bane of our existence. Why not give her a chance to swim in her own fantasies? Laughter erupted, the idea sparking the collective imagination of our already emboldened crowd. With Tom at my side, I took on the commanding role of orchestrating this grand representation of poetic justice through sheer ridiculousness. We spent the next minutes hatching our plan, weaving in and out of swimming pool puns, as if plotting a theatrical performance that would whisk away the ordered world Pamela sought to uphold. Laughing at the idea of Pamela pulling her pristine bob out of the pool's murky depths, we began formulating our strategy and allocating roles. Tom volunteered to oversee the technical side of things, excited to develop an ingenious contraption to reroute the sewer drainage, while several neighbors pitched in to design a sign that simply read, "Pool of Dreams and Schemes." I could hardly contain my excitement. The prospect of actually evoking karma was driving me mad with glee. The vision was a playful rebellion, an outrageous carnival of community instead of a bureaucratic battleground governed by unsanitary rules. The planning session turned into a full-blown neighborhood affair. The night progressed with unabashed hilarity. My neighbors, emboldened by our triumphant lament, encircled me like a pack of conspiratorial jesters. Each one contributed their flair, adding eccentric touches to our absolute comedy production. We were no longer a mere HOA subservient faction, but a quirky ensemble cast, ready to send Pamela one clear message. Enough was enough. Suddenly, it wasn't just about my driveway. It forward flipped into a dramatic epic of all our shared grievances against the suffocating hands of the HOA. Moments before the first star twinkled above us, we finalized our plan for a grand unveiling as an ultimate extension of our community spirit. Deciding our antics would continue until dusk compelled us home, we ducked behind bushes and bunkers, stifling fits of laughter while scanning for any signs of Pamela. Then, like clockwork, Pamela emerged, flanked by several bemused HOA board members, her clipboard at the ready, fingers tightening around its edges like a life buoy. "What sort of nonsense is this?" she bellowed as she crossed the threshold of her patio, pausing to gawk at the chaotic scene blossoming before her. I couldn't help but smile as my neighbors joined me in a collective sharp intake of breath. It was the sort of moment that deserved a slow-motion rewind for dramatic flair. Why, Pamela, we're merely enlightening the artistic value of community togetherness. What better way to harmonize our bonds than with some performance art? I faked innocence, truly feeling like a wild and clever trickster, outmaneuvering a stern librarian. It was the grand finale of humor and requital that propelled us into action, as Tom confidently began rigging the contraption to reroute the sewer into the shimmering pool. My neighbors plodded around him like browsers attending to a best-selling novel, which made the sight of Pamela's flabbergasted expression all the more delightful. "Not my pool," she gasped, her voice rising in pitch and panic. Amidst my laughter, I realized it was not merely joyful triumph, but a beautiful act of community catharsis. As Pamela took a step back, her proverbial throne teetering. The laughter roared louder as she attempted to reclaim her power, but this was a tapestry of realization. The rebellion was alive, and Pamela's authority was unraveling just as quickly as the festive energy swirled around us. In that moment, it felt joyous, like the ultimate glow of camaraderie was wrapped tightly around us, bonded by shared mischief and unified laughter. This was the culmination of years of battling pettiness with humor, the sweet nectar of poetic justice served chilled from Pamela's own garden of retribution. As our well-crafted mischief unfolded, I couldn't help but relish the snug, warm feeling of victory that enveloped me and my neighborhood. The parade route had not only been rewritten but turned into a spectacle of hilarity, a loud and radical celebration that no HOA could ever school into subservience. As the first whiffs of plumbing mischief danced around us, I knew there was only one thing left to do: toast to our new joyous uprising and let the laughter echo long after the final act. Thus, the era of Pamela the HOA dictator concluded, as we all triumphantly raised our makeshift cups, ready to imbibe in our own sweet victory. What could be funnier than that? My tranquil Saturday quickly devolved into a chaotic comedy of absurdity when I found out that my once sacred driveway was now an official parade route, complete with floats, and no doubt an overenthusiastic choir of children droning out off-key soliloquies about our so-called heritage. Who did they think they were, marching in and commandeering my space? I mean, sure, the HOA liked to think of themselves as some sort of benevolent tyrants, but this was verging on lunacy. While sipping my coffee on the porch, I could practically envision Pamela Granger, with her crisp suit and cat-eye glasses, hoisting a baton like she was the queen of a grand circus. I rolled my eyes so hard I feared they might permanently be stuck in the back of my head. "Oh, Pamela, did you really think I'd take this sitting down? Challenge accepted." My mind buzzed with ideas for retaliation, a mental slideshow of fantastical revenge scenarios flashing before my eyes. However, I decided to weigh my options before delving into anything rash. No need to pull a Jessica just yet. That's how my plans usually go, after all. For starters, I approached Tom, my neighbor, whose penchant for gadgets made him the perfect accomplice on my diabolical adventure. After inviting him over under the guise of discussing the new streetlights, the banality of HOA life can be quite the conversation starter, I dropped the bomb. "So, what do you think about a bit of good-natured sabotage?" I asked, raising an eyebrow with a mischievous grin. His eyes lit up with excitement, mirroring that of a kid who just spotted a candy store. Are we talking about inflatable dinosaurs? Or is it something a bit more serious? I laughed, shaking my head. Grander than that, my friend. I was thinking of a little plumbing interception. The words hung in the air for a moment, swirling around like an enticing aroma before Tom's face broke into a wide grin. Now we're talking. Because if they want my driveway to look like a kindergarten art project gone wrong, why not add a little character to their precious pool? And so, the plan took root, a glorious symphony of revenge. It was brilliant in its simplicity, and yet comically ludicrous in execution. The basic idea was to reroute the sewer line right into the HOA's sparkling, highly coveted community pool. Oh, the joy of envisioning Pamela wading into the depths of the community spirit and wretched smells. Tom and I set to work, armed with a shovel, a wrench, and an unwavering sense of purpose. We're basically community activists, but with a better sense of humor, I quipped, giggling at the prospect of our impending mischief. Hours later, sweat-slicked and triumphant, we stood before the semi-translucent waters of the HOA's pride and joy, the community pool, sparkling in the afternoon sun. I could practically hear the glee in my heart as Tom flipped those valves with gusto, the whole scenario unfolding in slow motion. In that moment, it felt as if I were in a heist movie, a deliciously chaotic caper set against the backdrops of meticulously manicured lawns and judgmental gazes. I pressed a big button on the improvised contraption to seal the deal. "May the odorous celebrations commence," I declared, chuckling as the first trickle of community spirit worked its magic. As the hilarity of the situation washed over me, I realized that regardless of what would happen next, my heart swelled with satisfaction. I imagined the soon-to-be floated collection of fruity cocktails and mulled wine parties transforming into a veritable swamp. Oh, they would be screaming for help as the pungent effluent bubbled to the surface, and I'd be there with my freshly made popcorn, floating close by like the cheerful ghost of revenge past. However, before my daydreams spiraled hopelessly into a cinematic landscape, I turned to Tom with the gravity of a philosopher. Do you think Pamela will finally see the error of her ways, or remain resolute like the ancient stone tablets of HOA tyranny? Knowing her, she'll probably hire a hazmat team instead of taking responsibility, Tom replied, wiping the sweat off his forehead before cracking another smile. But at least we'll leave behind a little chaos in our wake. And you can always say you created the fluctuations in community engagement, right? We both laughed as we imagined Pamela donning her protective gear, looking utterly flummoxed, exclaiming about the terrible consequences of improper maintenance. But the truth was that nothing of the sort would have happened had she respected the sanctity of my driveway. With that good-natured laughter ringing in the air, I knew that while this was only the beginning of my little campaign against the HOA, it would surely bring more delightful twists to our parade of revenge. After all, in the realm of petty squabbles, I was just getting warmed up. What other mischief could I dream up next? As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden glow over the finely manicured lawns of our HOA neighborhood, I couldn't help but chuckle at the chaos I had set into motion. With Tom and me working on my devilishly amusing plan, the community spirit was about to take a rather unique twist. I envisioned Pamela as she tried to assert her dominion over the parade, likely waving her baton with panicked precision as she noticed the distinct scent of mischief wafting toward her from the pool area. Would her precious community event become a tale of horrors that would be recounted over dessert for years to come? I was practically giddy with anticipation at the thought. Tom and I surveyed our handiwork, a veritable masterpiece of neighborhood glee and deliciously orchestrated chaos, each valve now brimming with potential. "So, what's next on the agenda?" Tom asked, leaning casually against the fence post, a sly grin plastered across his face. I had already begun drafting a list of new escapades. "How about we gather all the parade attendees for an impromptu dance-off right here, and lure them away from the HOA's festivities?" I replied, my laughter bubbling forth with the thrill of the moment. "We can show Pamela the true meaning of community, The idea of blowing the confines of our HOA's tyranny wide open tickled me to my core. With a quick thumbs up from Tom, we set up a party zone in front of my house. Using old speakers and a playlist that swung from energetic pop to classic dad rock, I blasted the music through my front yard, inviting the parade goers to partake. Who could resist a spontaneous dance party? Tom kicked off the festivities by doing an impressive moonwalk across the driveway. And soon, unsuspecting kids and parents alike couldn't help but join in, forgetting the floats and the meticulously planned parade route. The air was thick with laughter and the vibrant colors of float decorations as people twirled and whirled, oblivious to the impending doom lurking just across the street. Even Pamela, with her notorious disdain for fun, couldn't resist casting suspicious glances our way. "What's this ruckus?" she huffed, adjusting her cat-eye glasses as she strode over to us, arms crossed in both a power pose and a fit of barely contained annoyance. "This isn't part of the sanctioned celebration." The Herculean effort to maintain her stern expression cracked under the pressure of the joyous mob, and for a moment I almost felt bad for her. Almost. "Pamela, dear," I said sweetly, feigning innocence, "we're just enhancing the community spirit. Don't you want to join in the fun?" The more she fumed, the more my heart soared. Her irritation was truly a sight to behold. Suddenly, an ear-splitting shout echoed from behind Pamela, followed by her signature and theatrical gasping. "What is that smell?" Laughter erupted among the crowd as they caught the first whiff of my carefully designed plumbing enhancement, which was propagating its way into the festivities and attaching itself to the parade like a lead balloon. I couldn't help but giggle unabashedly at the scene before me, flabbergasted parents clutching their noses and children wrinkling their faces in utter disbelief. The chaos was already brewing deliciously. I watched as Pamela's cheeks turned the shade of a ripe tomato while she looked around, floundering for a way to regain her authority. "This is unacceptable. I will have order," she declared, but even her commanding presence couldn't outweigh the jesting spectacle unfolding before her. The smell was now a full-blown assault on our senses, and the parade's merriment became heightened chaos. Floats bobbed and swayed as people rushed to distance themselves from the pungent pipes of hilarity I'd chosen to activate. I glanced at Tom, whose laughter glinted in the now faint afternoon light, and it dawned on me. This was my moment to strike. I walked over to the crowd, now forming a barrier between Pamela and the pool, my heart racing with delight. "Ladies and gentlemen," I proclaimed dramatically, my hands gesturing with theatrical flair, "let us celebrate our independence from oppressive HOA regulations by dancing through the sewer of our community's heart." The crowd erupted into laughter, the absurdity of my proclamation sending waves of hilarity crashing through them. With every shake of their hips, they seemed to defy Pamela's reign, each newfound dance move resonating with the bitter taste of defiance against her rules. She furiously fumbled to regain her semblance of control, but the tide of community joy swamped her authority faster than a faulty pump could flood an HOA pool. Faint murmurs of Team Jessica started spreading among the parade goers, and I internally cheered. Unlike the carefully curated rigidity of Pamela's plans, my dance party became the very embodiment of our neighborhood spirit, wild, hilarious, and gloriously unpredictable. As Pamela raged into the swirling chaos, I felt a wild rush of exhilaration. I imagined the local news covering the grand parade as a humorous, chaotic disaster instead of the snooze fest it had undoubtedly been planned to be. The thought of seeing Pamela on TV, mortified in a hazmat suit as she waded through my plumbing gift, sent me into fits of laughter. What a beautiful display of poetic justice. With every twist and twirl, I realized I had unwittingly united the neighborhood and transformed a mundane day into an unforgettable spectacle. Could there be anything more satisfying than breaking free from the chains of an HOA's authoritarian grasp? Wait, what next? I glanced around and caught the enthusiastic faces of my neighbors, all of whom had unexpectedly become allies in my rebellious crusade against the tyranny of past orders. My mind raced with ideas, And before I knew it, the next delightful prank leapt into my thoughts. What if we organized weekly impromptu parties to keep Pamela guessing? Smash karaoke night? Spontaneous luau in the dead of winter? Surely defeat was far from perfect. It was ripe for exploration. The laughter continued to swell, and so did my ambitions. Who knew what new glorious mischief awaited just beyond the horizon? The possibilities were endless. As the jubilant chaos unfolded, the once orderly parade slowly transformed into a spectacle of absurdity that would rival a slapstick comedy. People were frantically trying to escape the noxious fumes, while paradoxically dancing like they were in the middle of a spontaneous music festival. Here was Pamela, with her lips pressed into a thin, angry line, attempting to control a situation she had officially lost grip on. Was she actually waving her arms like a conductor trying to control a runaway symphony? Oh, the irony was delectable. With every offbeat sway of a neighbor, I felt the glee of sweet revenge coursing through my veins. Even Tom looked like he was savoring every moment, and his low chuckle was infectious amid the chaos. I noticed him moving toward the makeshift dance floor, where a group of kids grabbed him and dragged him into their whirlwind of flailing limbs. Seeing my ally, who usually spent his days soldering circuit boards, join the fray brought tears of laughter to my eyes. I shot him a thumbs up, and he winked back, shaking his cargo shorts, as if he were some sort of cool dad throwback. The whirl of vibrant energy left me buzzing with anticipation for what was yet to come. As the smell permeated the parade, Pamela's grip on her carefully constructed empire was more fragile than a piñata at a 2-year-old's birthday party. As the odor continued to spread, people started rumbling around, rallying together against the shared plight of being in Pamela's impeccable territory. "Let's take back our streets," I hollered, letting the rallying cry spill forth like a battle anthem. "Who needs floats when we've got legs?" My friends and neighbors erupted with laughter, fueling the sense of camaraderie spreading like wildfire. Suddenly, I had an idea, a plan, as wild as the frenzy around us. I dashed to grab a few decorations that had been gathering dust in my garage. People loved a good theme, and I figured if I was going to stage a rebellion, it might as well be fabulous. As I rallied my fellow revelers, I pulled out garish streamers and inflatable palm trees, a splendid juxtaposition to the otherwise color-coordinated float colors of the parade. Now, we could showcase an equally proud display, a freedom festival, inspired on the spot by our heroic escape from the confines of HOA diabolical control. My neighbors began adorning themselves with inflatable wigs and neon sunglasses, morphing into a vibrant, eclectic ensemble of freedom fighters rather than mere parade onlookers. I stepped aside for a moment, reveling in the joyous chaos before me, delighting in how beautifully ridiculous my neighborhood had become under the glorious influence of unexpected shenanigans. As I stood witness to our flourishing revolution, I noticed Pamela standing awkwardly to the side, her frustration building exponentially with each passing moment. "This isn't a party," she bellowed, her voice barely cutting through the laughter and music. "This is a violation of HOA regulations." Almost instinctively, everyone began chanting "Freedom Fest" in rhythm. It was absolutely absurd. She was losing her grip as unmistakably as a school principal caught off guard at a school picnic. The memory of her stern expressions, framed by the disarray we had conjured, would make for a comic masterpiece in a neighborhood recollection. Did she truly believe she could fend off our newfound joy with a mere proclamation of rules? It was precisely at that moment, amidst the laughter and ironic spectacle, that I decided to up the ante. "Let's pour some spirit into this festival," I shouted, the wind whipping my hair as I waved a bottle of sparkling cider above my head. "Everyone grab your favorite drink, and let's toast to rebellion." With a chorus of cheers responding to my call, neighbors rushed to their homes, returning with all types of beverages, from lemonade to adult libations that had been stealthily stashed for backyard barbecues. Watching both Pamela's astonishment and our splendid jubilation flared through a shared energy. It was a celebration of unity suffused with rebellion that no HOA rule could obliterate. As toasts were made, hilarity erupted all around. I slipped into the crowd, feeling buoyed and mashed together with the camaraderie that was being forged through this spontaneous union. A child nearby danced atop a picnic table holding a makeshift flag, which turned out to be a cut-up pair of Pamela's property values signs, now transformed into triumphant symbols of our revolt. My laughter joined the music swelling around us, and I watched as Pamela stood helplessly at the edge, uncertain. Would she call the cops to handle the debauchery on her perfectly maintained grass? Would this day become a legendary tale of HOA folly recounted at countless gatherings, serving as a gentle reminder not to cross Jessica Hartwell? Just when the festival seemed to reach its peak of colorful absurdity, the unmistakable ring of a police siren pierced the festive atmosphere. My stomach dropped, but only for a moment, as I saw Pamela's eyes widen in sheer delight, the ultimate vindication in her mind. But what she couldn't foresee was the arresting image painted before the officers. A congregation sprawled merrily across our manicured lawns, dancing with unrestrained freedom to upbeat music. How would the law react to joviality in the face of absurd rules? Could authority properly respond to sheer ridiculousness wrapped in defiance? Before the officers even approached, a wave of laughter ricocheted through the festival as Tom delivered a perfect spin, causing a child to burst into giggles. It was a sight that transcended mere words, and even the cops would have a hard time containing the contagious fun we were creating. As the police officers stepped from their car, an enthusiastic neighbor shouted, "Welcome to the Freedom Festival!" while another added, "Get ready to dance." The unexpected scene seemed to pull them in like a magnetic force, fascinating the community and inviting the neighborhood into a spirited bond. Would Pamela fight them on this? Would the law adventure into this absurdity, test its boundaries against our merry chaos, or simply roll their eyes and join in? The stage was set for an undeniably momentous event. What would happen next? Would the officers heed Pamela's regulations or embrace hilarity with us? As the officers stepped forward, their faces a mix of bewilderment and barely contained amusement. I could feel the tension sizzling in the air like popcorn on a hot stove. Were they going to be the proverbial spoons that stirred the pot of this chaotic festival? Pamela, shaking with indignation beside them, looked like a cartoon character whose last bit of control had been snatched away by a rogue gust of wind. Her sharp features, usually so composed and commanding, had morphed into an exaggerated mask of horror as she realized this wasn't just a parade gone awry. It was a celebration of complete and utter rebellion, and she was trapped in the middle of it. I half expected her hair to start smoking from the heat of her indignation. "Good evening. Officers," I called out cheerily, adeptly steering my way into my very own narrative. "You've arrived just in time for our annual Freedom Festival. We were just getting into the spirit of community togetherness and enjoying some creative freedom." The officers exchanged glances, 2 times a nod before a barely concealed chuckle escaped one of them. Tom had already fluffed the crowd, who were steeped in giggles and revelry, swaying their way over to our new guests with homemade badges declaring, "The party police." Yes, we were definitely winning this absurd showdown. Pamela, however, wasn't ready to concede defeat, lips curling in a tight offense, as if the very air itself was tainted by lawlessness. "This is a blatant violation of HOA regulations. You have to restore order," she bellowed, her voice stark against the festive backdrop, as if she were calling for reinforcements during a strategic battle. I inwardly laughed at her attempts to box in this jubilant scene with her rigid bureaucratic constraints, while the officers stood nonplussed, shoulders relaxing as they leaned back slightly, eyeing the revelers who could hardly contain their excitement. Who would clear up this festive mayhem, the law themselves, or merely the sequence of joyous happenings that would turn this evening into legend? Regulations? Oh, you mean those guidelines you sprinkled like confetti around here? I couldn't resist. I strolled over, planting my hands on my hips, radiating the kind of unwarranted confidence that can only come from the sheer absurdity of the situation. How can you possibly enforce regulations when freedom is flitting quite literally before your eyes? I gestured to a child who was twirling in circles with a flag fashioned out of Margaret's discarded "Stay off my lawn" signs. The officers exchanged glances once again, and just like that, a ripple of laughter threaded through the crowd. Here was Pamela, the bastion of HOA righteousness, being outperformed in her own scripted tradition. You know, one of the officers spoke up, a grin spreading across his face. "If you folks are going to throw a party, might as well invite the lot of us too. We'll join you, just to keep things under control, of course." At that, the crowd erupted with applause, loving the idea of combining law enforcement with unrestrained jubilation. I glanced at Pamela, whose exasperation grew tighter as she gripped her clipboard with claws for hands, her stern glasses almost falling off her nose in disbelief. The more she huffed and puffed, the more her hard stance seemed to melt into sheer awkwardness. What would the HOA say to that? I wondered with a smirk, feeding on the delicious irony that had unfolded right before us. "Come on, officers," I shouted, gesturing grandly toward our makeshift dance floor where Tom was leading an impromptu conga line woven from neighbors who had found their groove. "Join us. Let's show the HOA what community spirit looks like." I danced forward to grab the nearest officer, my enthusiasm seeping into his demeanor, while Pamela, sputtering with indignation, was left behind, palm pressed against her forehead in surrender. With one half-hearted scowl, she looked like she was trapped between wanting to drag her presidential dignity through the mud or to join in the shameless fun. Truth be told, I was waiting for her to jump in and let loose. Oh, the glee that would bring. The officers chuckled and soon joined in the hilarity, adding to the layered absurdity unfolding before us. Swirling and twirling, we spun together through laughter and spirited interactions, the festival morphing from a random gathering of mustered chaos to a cherished memory of defiance. Soaking up this unexpected camaraderie, I watched as Pamela's expression shifted from fury to acknowledgement. The irony of her position, caught helplessly amidst our chaotic jubilation, would likely haunt her HOA presidential dreams for years to come. The neighborhood, once under her thumb of meticulous adherence to rules, was now a vibrant tapestry of betrayal, a collection of humans dancing for their shared right to enjoy life without someone else's constraints. As the festival unfolded into a beautiful debacle of uninhibited laughter and enchanting revelry, I could feel the chorus of Freedom Fest rolling through our ranks, strong and melodious, drowning out Pamela's last-ditch attempts to restore order. After a few minutes, I had to admit that we were winning, not just against an HOA board, but against the sheer absurdity of entitlement itself. Who could resist diving into an unexplained pool party where the rules were whimsically redefined, and the atmosphere was that of rebellion and love? All the while, Pamela stood on the fringes, contemplating her next move, perhaps realizing the futility of trying to rain on our parade, or should I say, sewage-spiced pool party. Was this round about to come to a close with her submitting to the hilarity before her? Would she even dare to ask for a glass of that punch or dance into ridiculousness against her own will? Thanks for tuning in. It really means a lot to us. If you're still fired up from this HOA showdown, check out our next jaw-dropping battle on the right, or let YouTube surprise you with another wild ride on the left. Take your pick, and I'll see you in the next neighborhood drama.